Getting ready to start prepping for the next Darkhorse 450 flight, and some people asked me about what lessons I learned from doing it last year, so I'm going to try to do this the best I can. I lost most of the footage, but I will lay in as much of the footage as I've got so you guys can get an idea of the terrain, the place we're flying into and out of. We'll just start out with a typical day. We'll wake up, probably be laying out our wings in the dark because we want to get a jump on it as fast as we can. If possible, we want to be in the air 30 minutes before sunrise. That's as early as we can legally be up there. The sooner we get up there, the more smooth air we get during the day and the more time we have to handle whatever craziness comes up. So you'll want a headlamp. You want to get used to laying your wing out in the dark, making sure you're clearing your lines. You want to start out plenty early and give yourself plenty of extra room to check your gear because you will be laying out in the dark and it'll be a little bit tricky. You'll have to be very careful you don't miss anything in pre-flight, right?
Good morning, everybody from Beach River. Wind conditions looking a little rowdy this morning, maybe. We'll see. I had a wonderful night at this airport. The people down here were really amazing, way better than I could have ever hoped for. And they set me up with a fantastic and very restful evening. And a pretty good cup of coffee.
So you want a headlamp, you want strobes on, you want to be able to check your radios. We'll get a good radio check with everybody before we go up. Make sure everybody knows the route, everybody's got their navigation set. And as far as flight conditions, what can you expect? I know normally paramotors, we only fly first 2 hours of the day and the last 2 hours of the day. That's generally the smoothest. For this flight, we will be in the air as much as we possibly can. That means you're going to be dealing with rougher air, more thermals, possibly higher wind conditions, maybe a little bit gusty. We won't go up into stuff that's not safe. We're not going to take any stupid risks to get this done, okay? One example of things you might expect as far as weather conditions go, taking off in the morning going out of Beach River last time, there was about 5 miles an hour or less on the ground, so it was a real easy takeoff. The air was real smooth. By the time I got up to 500 feet, I was making no forward progress at all. And shortly after that, I was actually flying backwards. I had to keep pushing up to about 3,000 feet before I got above that layer of wind and started making any kind of decent headway at all. So I know most people are used to flying low. I'm used to flying low. I'd much rather be at 30 feet than 3,000. But for this flight, we'll have to go where the air gives us the biggest advantage, where it's the safest and where it's the fastest. So you might be up at 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet all day long. Just something to think about. You're also going to be hauling more gear. You're going to have some extra weight. We're going to be crossing a lot of unfamiliar terrain. Navigation wasn't a problem last time. So I had 2 different apps. I'll talk about those later that I used to navigate. And between that and just kind of doing a map reconnaissance of the area before, it was pretty easy to pick my way where I wanted to go. Having said that, we will be flying over terrain in some areas that's a little bit sketchy. There's a lot of very wooded terrain. Well, once you start getting out to the east, there's more mountainous terrain. There's fewer options for landing out. That's another reason we'll have to get up a little bit higher. So if we do have a problem, then you can glide to your out. You're going to have to be very careful about always making sure you have a landing zone in mind. And some of them, the landing zones might be really tight, so we'll have to really pay attention to it. For each flight, you can expect to be in the air between 2.5 hours at a stretch. Depending on wind conditions and what kind of headway we make, we might only be in the air for an hour going from one fuel stop to the next. Or we might be pushing down the very last few ounces in the tank to be able to make it to the next airport. But for planning purposes, I would get used to being in the air 2.5 hours at a stretch, for sure. Things you'll definitely want to have with your motor will be things like a fuel mirror. Yes, you should know your fuel burn as accurately as possible before we go, but you always want to be able to grab that mirror and see what's physically in your tank. Something to cover up your air box at night. I wouldn't take an entire motor cover unless you have the room. I don't, but I can carry a t-shirt and a bungee cord and wrap it over my airbox to at least keep that covered up and make sure it's clean for the next day. Wing bag, of course, you will definitely want to have a way to stow your wing at night. As far as apps, what I use on my phone for this trip, for other trips, it all works really, really well together. For starters, one called PPGPS, which is just like a paramotor dashboard kind of a thing. It will give you your location, your map, your latitude, longitude, altitude, ground speed. It will give you an estimate of the wind speed. It's pretty good on that, not perfect. It will track your fuel burn and it will record your route. So whatever flight path you have, you can look at it afterwards. At the same time, I'll use a program called Avare, A-V-A-R-E. That is made more for general aviation. When you open it up, it comes up with a sectional and gives you your things like altitude, airspeed, and you can pick your next point really, really easy with that. Avare will let you double check PPGPS. If you've got two separate navigation apps pointing you at the same heading, then you can bet it's probably pretty close. I have found there can be discrepancies between them sometimes, but usually they run pretty close, and it's plenty good enough to get you within visual range of the next airport you're going to be hitting. Also, an app called Glimpse, G-L-Y-M-P-S-E. That one is going to be very important. That's a tracking app. It's free. All these apps are free. PPGPS, you can pay for the full version, and I recommend doing it. It's well worth it. But Glimpse is free. All it does is share your location. So just a GPS tracker uses your phone, and then you can create a link for that location, copy it, and send it to anyone you want. I'll always have that link out till I'm flying so my wife can track me, so friends and family can see where I'm at and see if I'm still moving. They know as long as they pull that map up and the little dot's still moving, I'm okay. They know that if the dot has stopped moving and I haven't called to check in, then they might need to start checking up on me. This is, if you go down in the middle of nowhere, that will help searchers get to you a whole lot faster because they'll at least have a place to start. Instead of 40 miles of wilderness from one airport to the next, they'll have an area within a mile or two of where you should be. Okay, equipment run through. I'll try to do this kind of quick. Starting off, my helmet set up. Got two Firehouse strobes stuck to the sides. Yes, that is clear packing tape to make sure nothing goes off. That seems to work really, really well. These strobes run for about 2.5 hours, maybe a little bit longer some days if they're in a really good mood. I'm really happy with them. You can see them from a long way off. I've got them helmet mounted so that I can turn them on and off easily while I'm in the air in case you forget to turn them on or you're going into a high traffic area. You can flip them on real easy instead of just having them on your cage where if you forget it you would have to land to switch it on or off. Be a little disjointed, that's okay. My GoPro, we all know those batteries kind of suck and they don't last very long, so I've got a spare battery set up. This is just a little cheap $20 external battery. You can pick it up at a gas station if you need to. With Velcro on the bottom, Velcro on the helmet. We stick right there. And we have our power cable that plugs up in the back. That usually gives me plenty of extra time as far as recording time, and I've been flying with it for a year and a half with that set up and it has never once come close to dropping off, so I'm pretty comfortable in how secure it is. For communications, for Bluetooth connectivity, I use a BTS2. No, it's not the Cena. This runs about 50 bucks. Cena's around $250. I have no complaints on this at all. I can wire this into my phone and listen to my music, take cell phone calls. I can slave it to my airband radio. I'll go over that in a minute. And I have no problem having all of those connected at the same time without one interfering with the other. I'm very happy with this setup.
I got it zip tied to the existing boom mic that was on the helmet. I've also got earphones that I can plug in a 2-meter in. I probably will not be using 2-meter on this flight unless some of the other pilots need it. That's just one less radio to worry about. Visor, I'll probably be taking the visor off of the flight. I usually just use this for cold weather. One trick for these visors, it's a product called Cat Crap. Yes, that is the actual name, C-A-T-C-R-A-P. It's a lens cleaner fog proofer. You just put it on like car wax and then take a nice cloth and rub it off just like car wax. It does a really good job of preventing fogging, any kind of moisture buildup when you're in the air, and it does a good job of cleaning your visor too, so you got good visibility. Okay, that's helmet. For my bag, I built a long-range flight bag out of an old laptop case. Works perfect for sitting in my lap. Holds everything I need. What I've got going on here, I sewed Velcro onto the top flap, and I sewed this extra little strap on the top flap. In addition, I put these on the side. These are my quick connects for my harness. That actually clips into my harness on my motor, which lets me clip in and, more importantly, clip out of it really fast if I need to. If I'm going for a water landing or some other unforeseen situation and I want to get rid of this so it's out of my way, all I've got to do is unclip and throw it and it's gone. No problem. Just takes 1 second. It is adjustable. It slides up and down. I went ahead and put these snaps on it so that when I want it to stay completely tight, I can snap that in and it will stay completely tight. That way it's not flopping around so much, but when I get up in the air I can loosen it up and I can put it where I need it. Also, tether on the side. Everything I mount on this bag is tethered. If it's not zipped up inside, it's tethered. This is my phone. That's what I use for navigation, tracking, all the important stuff like that. That will stay tethered to this little carabiner. And I keep Velcro on the back of it just to make it stay in place when it's flying. Airband radio. I use an ICOM A16, Bluetooth capable. Like I said before, works great with that BTS2 headset. I've got a tether on it as well. I will tie it into this strap, and while I'm in the air it'll actually be clipped onto this strap, but I don't trust that clip enough to do the job, so again, if it's hanging on the outside, we always make sure it's tethered, so if anything goes wrong I'm not losing the radio. It'll all stay with the flight bag. Downside of carrying a radio on a multi-day trip like this, with all the other electronics I have, I can either carry spare batteries or have a way to charge them with a USB, which is really convenient. With this radio, that's not an option. So you got to carry the base station with it. That's not a big deal. It's pretty small, fits in the bag along with all the wiring and the cords you need. And the radio will last a good day or two. It's pretty easy to find somewhere with a plug-in, some airport terminal that'll let you just sit it on the wall while you're eating lunch or whatever you're doing, refueling. Not a big thing. Alright, inside the flight deck. That is a lightweight bivy sack. Kind of looks like a big sleeping bag. Rolls up pretty small, pretty light. That's good in case you need to stay outdoors overnight. It's not going to give you a whole lot of warmth, but it'll keep the wind off of you, and it's not bad in reasonable temperatures, and since we're not like trying to do this in the middle of winter, that should be plenty. For other cold weather gear, for me, I'll carry this long sleeve quilted polypro. Not a hoodie, so I don't have to worry about a hood getting sucked into my prop. It's kind of thick, so it's really good at keeping me warm.
but it's not too much when the temperature gets up. You can generally just roll your sleeves up and you'll be okay, especially if you're in the air. A beanie. For me, this is a very important piece of gear. Not so much while you're flying, but if you're on the ground, especially if you're sleeping outside, keeping your head warm can mean the difference between a good night's sleep and a not so good night's sleep. And you really, really want to have a good night's sleep, right? So I'm carrying a beanie with me. With this one, you can pick them up at hardware stores. It actually has a little headlamp on it, which is pretty cool. My wife got me this for Christmas. Thank you, love. Which means I've got a backup light. Which also brings me to this. You want a headlamp? Yes, the light on your phone is great. Having a flashlight is great, but nothing compares to having your hands free. Remember, you will probably be doing a lot of setting up early in the morning before the sun's up good, clearing lines, pre-flighting your motor. There's also a good chance you'll be doing things like refueling and putting your motor to bed for the night in the dark as well. So you want to have your hands free, you want to have a good headlamp. And extra batteries, they're too light and easy not to carry a good half dozen or so. As far as tools in my bag, I'll carry a multi-tool with me. That's pretty handy for a lot of things. I will have a toolkit on my motor at all times that has everything I need to turn pretty much every nut and bolt on the motor. No, you can't throw a torque wrench in it, but that's okay. But you want to have tools with you so you can make quick repairs that you will probably have to make at some point along the way. Again, with the repairs, electrical tape. Very handy, very lightweight, very small. Yes, duct tape would be better. A big roll of duct tape is too much for this trip. Paracord or 550 cord. This is also very handy for net repairs, for lashing a broken strap, for a lot of different things. It can also be used for a tree kit. No, you're not going to descend with it out of a tree. That would be a bad idea unless it was some kind of extreme emergency. But if you're hanging in a tree, you can at least drop this down so whoever's coming to get you can tie a sturdier rope on the end of it. You can pull it up and then you can lower yourself down. Zip ties, of course, of all different sizes. I'll be taking a lot more than this on this trip. Everybody knows that's a paramotor's best friend. Now, as far as first aid kits, that's pretty much my first aid kit right there. Paracord, t-shirts, electrical tape. It's nothing fancy, but for what we're going to use, you should be able to handle most problems with that. It's not like we're going to be out in the middle of the backcountry Alaska where you're going to be a week away from a hospital, okay? You shouldn't be, at worst case, maybe a day away from a hospital, and that's really stretching it. So most things like that, if you happen to go down, have a bad cut, that'll be enough to handle the bleeding or whatever else you need for the most part, without carrying an extra giant first aid kit full of antiseptic and 3,000 band-aids and all that other ridiculousness. Gloves. You want gloves on this trip. If you're not used to flying with gloves, you need to get used to flying with gloves. Remember, you're going to be taking off and landing in potentially unfamiliar terrain. If your hands hit the ground, you want to have something that's going to protect them. If you get gloves, I recommend getting something fairly lightweight. These are very lightweight gloves, picked up at a hardware store. You can see that finger's pretty much worn out of them. These are touchscreen sensitive, which is something very important to look for. You can take something like a stylus and tether it onto your gear and use that to manipulate your phone. That's what most people use for navigation. That's what I use. But it's a whole lot easier if you've got touchscreen sensitive gloves. They're pretty cheap, like 10, 20 bucks. Well worth it. Enough to knock the cold air off in the morning, but not so much that they're uncomfortable when it gets hot. That's what you're looking for. Alright, we're going to be hitting airports for refueling, which means you're going to be mixing your fuel. It's real easy to throw a quart of oil in the bag. We will have chances along the way to stop, go into town, find more if we need it. It might be a good idea if you've got the room and you can handle the weight, carry some extra oil with you. Make sure you have plenty. As for measuring and mixing, not carrying a big mixing bottle on this, so what I do for these kinds of trips, these are TSA approved shampoo bottles. They measure out 3 ounces. They actually hold 3.2 ounces, which is just what I need for my fuel mix. So I know that if I touch down at an airport, hit the fuel pumps, and measure out 2 gallons of fuel, I need 2 of these bottles to make 2 gallons of mixed fuel. So I put my fuel in, I put my whatever many bottles I need in, mix it up, I'm ready to rock again. Notice all this stuff is going to be in Ziploc freezer bags. You really want these, that'll keep you from making a giant mess. Extra freezer bags are way too handy and light to not have several. Alright, for power requirements, it's a RAV Power 27,000 milliamp, thereabouts, 26,800 milliamp hour battery pack. This is enough to keep my electronics going for about 2 days. That means recharging strobes, phones, whatever else you need. GoPro batteries. Has 3 USB ports on it, so you can charge 3 things at once. Usually while I'm in the air, I will have this tucked inside my flight bag with a wire running out to my phone so my phone stays charged. And then when I hit the ground, when I dump my gear to go refuel, I'll throw my helmet down, I will hook up my strobes and my Bluetooth headset and have them all charging while I'm refueling. That Bluetooth headset will last all day, no problem, but I try to keep it as charged as possible because you never know what's going to happen. So anytime I hit the ground, all these get plugged up. If it's night and I have somewhere to charge it, I will plug it up and charge it to make sure I'm keeping this topped off as much as possible. Of course, that comes to power cords. You want to have extra power cords for everything. Make sure you have USBs, at least 2 for every connection you need. They're light, they're not hard to roll up, and you can carry a lot of them without a lot of expense on weight. So have extra cords in case you break one, mess one up, because that's going to happen. You want to have extra gear with you. Earplugs, of course, you're going to be up all day or as much as possible. Not having to listen to your motor blasting in your ear will add to your comfort. Anything that adds to your comfort is going to keep you from wearing out so fast. Flight log, that's what I carry just to write down my flights, any little notes from one to the next. Notebook, pens, pencils, these are handy for leaving notes or just for tracking stuff for later on. You might want to journal while you're going and have something to read about afterwards. Wallet. Don't forget your wallet. It's easy to do. Ask me how I know. For food, I don't go with anything fancy. What I've found, 1 water bottle. I can refill it every time we stop. I can drink it in the air if I really need to. I usually don't. And Cliff Bars. I love them. They taste great. Peanut butter toffee crunch. That's the best as far as I'm concerned. Can't beat it. A lot of energy, plenty of calories. I can pull them out in the air and eat them without having to worry about any kind of a mess or dropping the trash or anything like that. When I hit the ground, I can throw one in my mouth, eat it real quick, and be up and gone again. Real easy to carry 10 or 12 of those in the bag. They're not too heavy. Sectional. You're not going to be pulling it out and navigating with it in the air, of course, but it's handy to have while you're on the ground, just so you can look at it and get a visual reference of your flight path. Tennessee is actually in the middle of 4 sectional charts, so what I did was cut them all out, cut out the state, tape them all together, and that's what I've got. And it folds up easy, slips into my laptop case flight carrier. Of course, you're going to want to kind of tailor this for yourself, your motor, your gear. Try it out as much as possible. For training, you want to be carrying this stuff as much as you can on as many long distance flights as you can. Plan a day to get up in the morning, hit an airport, refuel, turn around, come back home. That'll give you a good idea of what works and what doesn't. I went through a whole lot of stuff that did not work with this gear before I found something that worked pretty well for me. The only way to figure that out is trial and error. As far as spare fuel, I probably will not be taking any this time. I still haven't made my mind up on that. If I do take it, it will be a very different setup than I did last time. And when I find something that works the way I want it to, I'll do a video on that too so you guys can see it. If you have a good setup for spare fuel, let me know. I would love to see it. And that's what I got for equipment. If you've got any other ideas, anything you think I should add to it or take away from it, let me know.